I'm 77 years old. I was married for 48 years, and I want to tell you about 5 mistakes, not dramatic ones, not the kind you see in movies, the small ones, the quiet ones, the kind that happen so slowly you don't notice until one morning you're standing in a kitchen that used to have music in it, and it doesn't anymore, and you're trying to remember when that stopped. Susan died 14 months ago. Cancer. We had 6 months between the diagnosis and the end. I had 48 years before that. I didn't use them the way I should have. If you're married or you love someone, I need you to hear this. I met Susan at a law firm Christmas party in 1974. She wasn't a lawyer. She was temping at the front desk, saving money to finish her art degree. She had paint under her fingernails that she'd missed scrubbing. I noticed it immediately. I thought it was the most interesting thing I'd ever seen on a person. She laughed at everything I said that night. Not to flatter me. She just found life genuinely funny. We danced twice. She hummed along to the music while we moved. I remember thinking, I have to know this woman. I have to know everything about her. We were married 11 months later. The first years were close, genuinely close. We'd stay up past midnight talking about nothing important. She'd drag me to art galleries on Saturdays, and I'd pretend to understand what I was looking at, and she'd catch me pretending, and we'd both laugh. She made me a better person just by being in the room. Then I made partner at 35. I want to be very clear about something. I never had an affair. I never raised my voice. I never did the things that people point to when a marriage falls apart. I was, by all outward appearances, a good husband. I provided. I showed up to the important things. I was present, except I wasn't. The drift didn't happen overnight. It happened in increments so small I couldn't feel them. A Saturday at the office instead of the gallery. A vacation cut short for a client. A dinner conversation where she was talking and I was nodding, but I was somewhere else, some case, some brief, some problem that would be completely forgotten within 6 months. Susan adapted. That's what people do when their partner drifts. They adapt. She stopped suggesting the galleries. She stopped asking me to dance in the kitchen on Sunday mornings. We used to do that when we were young, just the two of us, just because. She stopped reaching for my hand at movies, not dramatically, not with an announcement. She just stopped. And I told myself everything was fine because we didn't argue, because the house was peaceful, because she smiled at me every morning. I mistook her grace for contentment. I mistook her silence for satisfaction. I was wrong about both. I've had 14 months to think about this. 14 months alone in a house with Susan's handwriting on recipe cards and her reading glasses still on the nightstand, because I can't bring myself to move them. These are the 5 mistakes. Not hypothetical, not from a book, from 48 years of living them. Mistake 1. Confusing providing with loving. I thought my job as a husband was to provide, and I was exceptional at it. Susan never worried about money. The house was beautiful. The kids went to good schools. Every practical need was met before it was even spoken. What I didn't understand, what took me far too long to understand, is that provision is not intimacy. Writing a check is not the same as being present. Security is not the same as connection. My colleague David retired at 62. His wife Margaret used to joke that she'd married him for better or for worse, but not for lunch. 50 years, that marriage. They drove each other crazy in retirement, but they knew each other. They argued and laughed and irritated each other with a familiarity I'd have traded everything I earned for. I provided beautifully. I was a stranger in my own home. Mistake 2. winning arguments instead of protecting the relationship. I was a litigator for 31 years. Arguing was not just my profession, it was my identity. I was trained to find the weakness in every position, to press on it, to win. I brought that into our marriage. Not every disagreement needs a victor. I didn't know that. If Susan said something I thought was factually incorrect, I corrected her. If she had a concern I thought was illogical, I dismantled the logic. I wasn't cruel about it. I was precise, which is, in many ways, worse. There was a night, I remember it clearly, we were arguing about something so small I can't even recall what it was. I won the argument. I knew I'd won it. And Susan went very quiet and said, "You're right, Peter," and she went to bed. I felt satisfied for approximately 4 minutes. Then I sat in that quiet living room and understood that winning had cost me something. I just didn't know the full price yet. Don't win arguments with the person you love. Win the relationship. Mistake 3. Assuming love is understood, not expressed. I loved Susan. Deeply, completely. That was never in question, not in my mind. But I assumed she knew it. I assumed that because I felt it, she felt it. I assumed that 48 years of history communicated what I never said out loud. Men of my generation were raised this way. You didn't speak love. You demonstrated it through action, through loyalty, through not leaving. What I know now is this. Your partner cannot live inside your feelings. They can only receive what you give them. And what I gave Susan was loyalty and provision and reliability. What I did not give her nearly enough was words, simple, direct words. You are beautiful. I am grateful for you. I notice you. I see you. Tell the person you love that you love them. Today, specifically. Not, you know how I feel. They don't. Not really. Not unless you say it. Mistake 4. Stopping curiosity. When I met Susan at that Christmas party, I was fascinated by her. I asked her questions. I wanted to know everything. The paint under her fingernails, her family, what she thought about things. Somewhere in the middle of our marriage, I stopped asking. Not because I stopped caring, but because I made an assumption that is, I now believe, one of the most dangerous assumptions in a long marriage. I assumed I already knew her. I knew the version of Susan from 1982. I knew her preferences from 10 years ago. But Susan was still evolving, still developing opinions, still becoming. And I wasn't curious about who she was becoming. I was simply comfortable with who I remembered. My neighbor Tom is 71. His wife Claire paints watercolors now. Took it up at 68. Never painted a day before in her life. Tom goes to every small show she has. He looks at her work like he's still learning who she is. 44 years married, and he still asks her questions. You can see it in how she looks at him. Stay curious about your person. They are not finished. Neither are you. Mistake 5. Waiting for later. This is the one that undoes me most. We had things we were going to do, places we'd talked about going. Susan wanted to spend a summer in Portugal. She'd found a small house on the coast, sent me photographs, planned the whole thing in her mind. I kept saying later, after this case. After I wind down the practice. After the kids are settled. After. Later never came. It never does. There is a version of my life where I booked that house in Portugal, where Susan and I sat on that coast and watched the sun go down, and she hummed along to something, and I held her hand and said the things I should have been saying for decades. That version exists. I just didn't choose it. Don't wait for later. Later is a lie we tell ourselves, so we don't have to be brave right now. After Susan died, I was going through her things. I wasn't ready to. Her sister kept offering to help, and I kept saying I needed more time. 3 months after the funeral, I finally went into her study. She kept a journal. I didn't know she kept a journal. 48 years, and I didn't know that about her. I almost didn't read it. It felt like a trespass. But I opened it just to see, and I sat down on the floor of her study, and I read every word. Most of it was beautiful. Her observations about ordinary things, notes about the grandchildren, sketches of ideas for paintings she never made. It was her, the interior version of her, that I had not been curious enough to find while she was alive. And then I found an entry from about 6 years ago. She wrote, "I wonder if Peter even notices I've stopped asking him to dance." That was all. One sentence. No anger in it, no bitterness. Just a quiet, honest question from a woman wondering if her husband was paying attention. I sat on that floor for a long time. I cried not because she was gone, though God knows that grief is its own country. I cried because she had been lonely while she was right here, in our house, in our bed, in our life. She had been lonely, and I had been so certain that everything was fine. She stopped asking me to dance, and I didn't notice. That is the sentence I will carry for the rest of my life. She didn't write it with accusation. She wrote it like a woman who had made peace with something that shouldn't have required peace. She deserved better than my peace. She deserved my attention. I've thought about what I would say if I could distill 48 years into one truth. Here it is. Love is not a feeling you have. It is a practice you do. It is Tuesday night with the television off. It is asking a question you don't already know the answer to. It is dancing in the kitchen when there's no occasion for it. It is saying, "I see you not once," when you're courting them, but every week, every month, every ordinary Wednesday, for as long as you're both breathing. The feeling of love, that rush, that electricity that arrives on its own, you don't build that. But the practice of love, that requires choosing, daily, unglamorously, without applause. Most people wait to feel the electricity again before they start practicing. That is exactly backwards. Practice it, show up, pay attention, stay curious, say the words, and the feeling will follow. Wait for the feeling first, and one day you'll be sitting on a floor reading a journal, wondering how you got so far away from someone who was right there. I want to speak to you directly now. If you are married, or you are with someone you love, I want you to do something tonight. Put the phone down, not in a minute, tonight. When you walk through that door, or when they walk through yours, put it down and look at them. Actually look. Not the glance of a person checking a box. Look the way you looked at them when you were still learning who they were. Ask them something you don't already know the answer to. Not how was your day, you know how their day was. Ask them something real, what they've been thinking about lately, what they're afraid of, what they still want at this exact point in their life. And if they have a ritual they've been trying to start with you, a walk they've mentioned, a trip they keep bringing up, a small thing they ask for repeatedly, say yes. Today. Don't file it under later. Don't wait for the cancer diagnosis to become present. Don't wait for the packed bag to realize you've been absent. Don't wait for the journal you were never supposed to read. You have time right now that I would give everything I earned in 31 years of law to have back. The diagnosis doesn't change who you are. It just removes the lie that you have unlimited time to become who you meant to be. You don't have unlimited time. None of us do. Dance in the kitchen tonight. Put on a song and just dance. It will feel silly. Do it anyway. Susan would tell you the same thing. Every Sunday morning now I put on Ella Fitzgerald. Blue Skies. That was Susan's song. She used to hum it while she made coffee. I used to sit at the kitchen table reading briefs and barely hear it. I hear it now. I stand in the middle of that kitchen and I dance, by myself. Probably ridiculous, a 77-year-old man dancing alone on a Sunday morning. I don't care. It's the best part of my week. And somewhere, I have to believe somewhere, Susan finally got her dance. Don't wait until Sunday morning when there's no one left to dance with. Go right now.